Based on a 20-year study, they said the reef is less than 4,200 years old. Oh, okay. Well, then I have a question. If the Earth is millions of years old, why don't we have a bigger reef someplace?
You're assuming that the reef was... You're assuming that the water levels have always been the same, which they have not. You also say that they said it was... I don't know the reason. Sorry, I don't listen to you. But the Great Barrier Reef started growing about 20,000 years ago. That is an accurate estimate.
Gorge is 7.5 miles long. All right, this textbook says a simple calculation shows it's been 9,900 years worth of erosion. Well, it's not quite that simple, okay? You see, Niagara Falls is right here. It used to be further north by Lewiston. It's moving south, quite obviously, because the water flows north. I got a question now. If the Earth is millions of years old, why hasn't it eroded all the way back to Lake Erie?
Kent, I hate how you're assuming that the rate of the water flow has always been the same. It has not always been the same.
Could have done that in less than 5,000 years. I was in a debate one time and this atheist said, Hovind, would you please tell me how the freshwater fish survived Noah's flood? I said, well, sir, aren't you assuming the flood was salt water? He said, the ocean is salt water. I said, well, yeah, it is today. I think during the flood it's probably mostly fresh water. He said, well, how did the saltwater fish survive? I said, well, there probably weren't any. He said, the ocean is full of saltwater creatures. I said, well, yeah, it is today. I said, I think what happened over the last 4,400 years, some animals have gradually become adapted to saltwater. And today we have freshwater alligators and freshwater crocodiles and saltwater crocodiles. And they probably had a common ancestor, a crocodile. He said, that's evolution. I said, oh, it is not. Going from a freshwater croc to a saltwater croc is a minor change compared to what you believe. So you believe they changed from a rock to a croc.
Kent, that is still evolution, no matter what you say. You're speaking of microevolution, okay? You should even know what that is. I mean, the first video, the first part of this sermon was talking about the kinds of evolution. Now, you should know what microevolution is, okay? You're talking about microevolution, okay? Either way, it's still a change in DNA, okay? And you still don't get this. Abiogenesis is different from evolution. You still do not understand that.
How many of you have ever gone into a cave and the guide said, don't touch the formations, they take millions of years to form? They all have the same story, right? You go to Carlsbad, they'll say, yep, it took 250 million years to these formations in here. They say tiny drops of water slowly build these formations. One guy said it takes 1,000 years to grow from 1/10 of a centimeter to 10 centimeters, up to 2.5 inches. Maximum be 2.5 inches per 1,000 years. Well, I don't think so. Here are some 50-inch long stalactites growing under the Lincoln Memorial, built 1922. Here's a bat covered up with flowstone before it could rot. It doesn't take millions of years for that stuff to form. Here's 2-inch stalactites growing off a refrigeration shed in Pensacola, Florida. There's a building in Indiana, it's only 40 years old. The basement is full of huge flowstone formations in 40 years from water dripping through the limestone. Here's a mine in Australia that was closed down for 55 years. When they opened it up to just check to see how it's doing, there were huge cave formations that formed in 55 years. There are 2 people inside that circle to give you an idea how big this is. Here's a pipe that was dripping water up at Herbert Field near Pensacola at Eglin Air Force Base. Made a 13-inch stalactite in 7 years. Underneath on the ground was a stalagmite. Everybody kept tripping on it, and so they broke it off and gave it to me. It's in my museum. Stalagmite formed in 7 years. Here's a parking garage in Texas. Brand new parking garage, built in 1997. It was making stalagmites on students' cars parking under it. So they put up a drip pan to catch the water. A guy in Wyoming had a hot mineral spring on his property in Thermopolis, Wyoming. And so he stuck a pipe in the ground back in 1903. The water came out the top of the pipe, ran down the sides. They called it the teepee fountain, kind of a natural fountain. Everybody thought, wow, that's cute. He's got a fountain in his yard. Well, slowly over the years, the water, as it ran down the side of the pipe, evaporated, some of it, leaving behind mineral deposits. How many have seen those mineral deposits in your sink, okay? Well, the guy died, and they left the pipe sticking in the yard. It's now been there for 100 years. Here it is, about 6 years ago. That would take some lime away to scrub that clean, don't you think? Sure would. It does not take millions of years to form those things. That's 100 years worth. The guy down the street started one later. It's not quite as big. But folks, it doesn't take a long...
Kent, you know what really matters in the making of those? The rate at which the water falls. You know what else really matters? How much material is in those drops of water. In caves, there's a lot... There's not as much water, depending on which cave you're in, but there's not as much water dripping down as there is from a refrigerator or a car, you know? It really does depend on how much material and at the rate at which the water flows. You are missing those two giant factors.